This is a fictional frontier story created for inspiration and entertainment. Some scenes are dramatized, and some visuals may be created with the help of AI. The Idaho sky in 1885 was a relentless, hollow blue. It was a beautiful day, yet beauty provides no shelter for a broken woman and a shattered wagon. Mei Lin stood alone on the dusty trail.
She wiped the salt and grit from her forehead. She was 20 years old. Her hands, however, were already calloused like a seasoned laborer's. She wore a purple silk dress. It was stained with the red clay of the mountain path. This dress was her last ghost. It was the final remnant of a refined life in San Francisco.
Behind her, the sawtooth mountains rose like jagged teeth. They bit into the horizon. She had been traveling for 3 days. She had fled the mining camps near Boise. She had spent 2 years cooking, washing clothes, and sleeping behind canvas walls after her father's death. No one had protected her there. No one had asked if she was tired.
Now, the wooden wheel of her small wagon lay splintered in the dirt. It had struck a hidden rock in the center of the narrow road. Mei Lin did not cry. Her father had taught her that tears were a waste of moisture. He had died in the winter of 1882.
He died driving spikes into the frozen earth for the Northern Pacific Railroad. Now she was a shadow in a country that wanted her gone. The Chinese Exclusion Act had been signed 3 years prior. It made every stranger a potential hunter. It made every law a cage.
She reached into the wagon and gripped a small iron skillet. It was her only weapon. It was her only tool for survival. The wind began to whistle through the dry sagebrush. Then she heard it. The steady, rhythmic thud of horse hooves. She froze. She pulled her tattered shawl tight. A man appeared at the bend of the road. He rode a tall, powerful buckskin horse. He wore a sweat-stained Stetson and a canvas coat the color of the earth. His face was a map of the high plains. It was etched with lines of wind, sun, and loss. He looked to be in his 50s. His beard was the color of a winter frost.
Mei Lin held her breath. She held the skillet. The man pulled the reins and stopped. He looked at the broken wheel. Then he looked at the young girl.
He saw her delicate features. He saw the defiant, terrified spark in her dark eyes. His name was Silas Thorne. He had lived on this ridge for 30 years. Silas had seen the wilderness take many things.
But he had never seen a girl like this. She looked fragile, but there was a stubborn strength in the way she stood, like someone who had already survived too much to fall apart now. Need some help there, miss?
His voice was deep. It rumbled like distant thunder over a dry valley. Mei Lin did not answer. She did not trust kindness. In 1885, kindness from a white man often came with a heavy price.
"I can fix it myself," she said. Her English was careful. It was precise. Silas tipped his hat. He looked at the splintered oak.
"Unless you can turn dust into wood, you are going to be here a long time." He dismounted with a slow, heavy grace. His knees creaked. They were worn out from decades of chasing cattle across the draws. He walked toward the wagon.
He stopped 10 feet away. He wanted her to know he was not a predator. "I have a ranch 2 miles up this road. I have a forge. I have enough spare timber to make you a new wheel." Mei Lin looked at the sun. It was dipping toward the jagged peaks. The temperature in the mountains drops like a stone once the light fades. The wolves did not care about her independence. The mountain lions did not care about her dignity. She looked at Silas. She saw a steady calm in his gray eyes. He reminded her of the stone statues in her grandfather's village. He looked like a man who knew the weight of a promise. "Why would you help me?" she asked. For a moment, Silas did not answer. He looked at the broken wagon. Then he looked at the purple dress, stained with dust. Something in his face changed. It was not pity. It was memory. Silas rubbed his chin.
He looked towards his own empty house on the hill. "Because I know what it feels like to be stranded on a road that does not want you." Mei Lin finally nodded.
She lowered the skillet. Silas tied his horse to the back of the wagon. He lifted the heavy axle. His strength was surprising for a man of his years. He propped it up with a large stone. He began to unhitch her mule. "We leave the wagon here for tonight. You can ride my horse. I will lead the way." Mei Lin hesitated. Then she climbed on to the tall buckskin.
The saddle smelled of old leather and tobacco. It smelled of honest, lonely work. As they walked toward the ranch, the sky turned a deep shade of violet. Silas spoke to his horse in a low murmur.
He told Mei Lin about his wife, Martha. She had passed away 10 years ago. He told her about the drought of 1877. It had nearly broken his spirit. Mei Lin listened.
She felt the tension in her chest begin to soften. She told him her name. She told him about the father she had lost to the bitter Idaho cold. They reached the ranch house as the first stars pierced the dark. It was a simple cabin. It was built of hand-hewn logs and steady hope.
A warm light glowed from the window. Inside, a small fire burned. Silas showed her to a small guest room. It smelled faintly of dried lavender. The room had once belonged to Martha. He left a bowl of beef stew on the table. He left a piece of crusty bread. "Eat," he said. "Sleep. The wood will wait for morning." Mei Lin woke the next morning to a rhythmic sound. Clang, clang, clang. It was the sound of a hammer hitting an anvil. She walked outside. The air was crisp. It smelled of pine needles and wood smoke. Silas was in the small shed. He was shaping a new iron rim for her wheel.
He looked up. He wiped soot from his forehead with his sleeve. "Breakfast is on the stove. The coffee is hot." Mei Lin entered the kitchen. She saw a small ceramic bird on the windowsill.
It was blue pottery. It looked fragile and out of place in this rugged world. She touched it gently. A wave of homesickness washed over her.
Silas came in a few minutes later. He sat across from her. "My Martha loved that little bird," he said softly. "She said it reminded her that beauty could survive anywhere." Mei Lin looked at her hands. She thought of the long, dangerous road ahead. "I am going to Oregon," she whispered. "I have an uncle in Portland. He has a shop." Silas nodded. His expression turned serious. "The road to Oregon is long. There are men out there who do not like your kind, Mei Lin. They blame the Chinese for the gold running thin. They blame you for the wages going down." "I heard about Rock Springs, Wyoming." Mei Lin flinched. The Rock Springs massacre was a fresh wound. Dozens of Chinese miners had been murdered. Their homes had been burned to ash. The news had traveled through the camps like a dark, suffocating cloud. "I am not afraid," she said, but her voice trembled. Silas reached across the table. He did not touch her hand. He knew the boundaries. "You should be afraid. Fear keeps a person alive, but you do not have to go through the pass alone. Stay here for a few days. Let me fix your wagon right. I will ride with you as far as the Snake River crossing. They will not bother a girl traveling with an old cattleman like me."
Mei Lin looked at the fire. She saw the sincerity in his weathered face. Over the next 3 days, a strange and beautiful bond began to grow. It was not the romance of youth. It was something deeper. It was the recognition of two solitary souls.
Mei Lin cleaned the cabin. She cooked a meal with the few spices she had hidden in her pack. Silas ate the spicy noodles. He smiled for the first time in a decade. He taught her how to shoot a Winchester rifle. "Line up the sight," he told her. "Breathe out before you pull the trigger." He showed her how to read the clouds. He showed her how to know when a storm was brewing over the peaks. One evening, they sat on the porch. They watched the moon rise over the valley. Silas spoke of the crushing loneliness of the last 10 years. Mei Lin spoke of her mother in Guangdong.
Under the silver moonlight, Mei Lin's shoulders began to shake. For the first time since her father's death, the tears came. Hot, heavy, unstoppable.
Silas did not speak.
He handed her a clean handkerchief. Then he sat beside her, close enough that she could feel she was not alone, far enough to honor her dignity. He did not offer empty words. He simply let her know she was no longer alone in the dark.
It was a moment of pure connection. It transcended age. It transcended race. It was two lonely souls finding comfort in each other's company. However, the peace was shattered on the fourth morning. This fictional scene includes historical prejudice and intimidation. It is included only to show the hardship of the time, not to support hatred or violence. 3 men on horseback rode into the yard. Rifles lay across their laps.
They were local miners. They were fueled by cheap whiskey and misplaced hate. They had seen the girl on the road. They had followed the tracks. "Thorn," the leader yelled. "We know you're hiding that Chinese girl in there. The law says they don't belong. We're here to see her gone." Silas stood up. He stepped onto the porch. He held his shotgun in the crook of his arm.
His eyes were as cold as mountain runoff. "This is private property. That girl is a guest in my house." The miners laughed. One of them spat tobacco juice into the dirt.
"You're a traitor to your own kind, Silas. Get her out here now, or we'll burn this shack with both of you inside." Mei Lin stood behind the door. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird.
She did not want this man to die for her. She would not allow it. She stepped out onto the porch. She stood beside Silas. The miners went quiet.
She stood tall. Her purple dress caught the golden morning light. "I am going to Oregon," she said. Her voice did not shake. "I am the daughter of a man who built your railroads.
I have as much right to this dirt as you do." The leader raised his rifle. But Silas was faster. He cocked the shotgun. The sound was a death knell in the quiet yard. He pointed it directly at the man's chest. "The next sound I want to hear is your horses leaving. If I see a puff of smoke, I will hunt you to the end of the earth." The miners looked at the old man. They knew Silas Thorne. They knew he had survived range wars that had buried stronger men.
And they knew a cornered old rancher could be more dangerous than a young fool with a rifle. They saw a man who had nothing left to lose but his honor. They saw the fire in the girl's eyes. They felt a sudden, sharp chill. They turned their horses.
They rode away without another word. Mei Lin leaned against the railing. She let out a long, shuddering breath. "Thank you, Silas," she whispered.
Silas lowered the gun. He watched the dust settle. "They will be back with more men. We need to get you to the river today." They spent the afternoon loading the wagon. The new wheel was strong.
It was better than the original. Silas went into the house. He returned with a small bundle. He handed it to Mei Lin. It was the blue ceramic bird. It was wrapped in a soft wool cloth. "Take this," he said, "to remind you that you have a friend in the mountains." They reached the Snake River as the sun began to set. The water was wide and rushing with snowmelt. A ferry was waiting.
Silas helped her onto the deck. He held her mule's bridle. He reached into his pocket.
He pulled out a small gold coin. "This was the first gold I ever found in Idaho," he said. "I want you to have it, for your shop in Portland." Mei Lin took the coin.
Her eyes filled with tears. She reached out and hugged the old cowboy. He smelled of pine and leather. He smelled like the only home she had ever known in this hard country. "I will never forget you, Silas Thorne." "If my father were alive," Mei Lin whispered, "I think he would have liked you."
Silas looked down. For a moment, the old rancher could not speak. Then he nodded slowly. "I think I would have liked him too."
The ferry began to pull away. Silas stood on the muddy bank. He watched until the wagon was a tiny speck on the horizon. Only then did Silas wipe his eyes with the back of his hand. He smiled through the ache.
For the first time in 10 years, his empty house did not feel like a punishment. It felt like a place that had done one last good thing. He felt the loneliness return, but it was different now. It was a quiet ache instead of a hollow void. He knew that somewhere in Oregon, a girl in a purple dress was building a dream.
Mei Lin reached Portland 2 weeks later. She found her uncle. She opened a small tea shop on a corner. She placed a blue ceramic bird in the window. She grew old.
She had children who became doctors and teachers. She told them the story of the man who saw a person instead of a stranger. She taught them that the hardest road often leads to the best heart. The Idaho mountains still stand.
The wind still whispers through the sage. If you listen closely, you can hear the sound of a hammer on an anvil. You can hear the song of a girl who found her way home. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this journey. Your support means everything to us.
Please leave a comment below. Tell us what you think of Silas's sacrifice. Did this story touch your heart? Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next historical tale. Next time, we explore the secret life of a woman who disguised herself as a soldier in the Civil War. It is a story of courage you won't want to miss. Until we meet again on the frontier, may your road always lead you to a friendly door.